Good afternoon, everyone, and on behalf of myself and our Undersheriff Chief Deputy Donna Lazinski, thank you for joining us today. A couple thank yous as I begin. I want to thank our U.S. Attorney Maria Chapa Lopez and lead prosecutor Thomas Palermo. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being such great community partners in our fight against this opioid problem. Our Chief Forensic Toxicologist Julia Pearson from the Hillsborough County Medical Examiner's Office, and I know the Chief Medical Examiner is here along with the Assistant Toxicologist. Thank you for all your assistance. I know we have certainly overburdened you these days with the opioid problem, but thank you for your diligence. Also like to thank our HCSO Heroin Working Group that we established at the beginning of 2018. Thank you for all your diligence. And lastly, someone very special and near and dear to us, Louita Hargens, one of the victims in these cases, one of the overdose cases, mother who joins us today. Louita, thank you. Victim's brother, thank you for being here, and I know the stepfather is here as well. Thank you for being here. I know this is extremely difficult for you. We sure appreciate you being here today. I certainly and firmly believe that to fight this opioid epidemic that we have, it's going to be a multi-pronged approach. It's going to take education, certainly treatment, and then enforcement. And today we're here to talk about the enforcement component of it. Today we are sending a very clear message to those drug dealers who choose to pollute our streets with their product. We are going to hold you responsible. Your drug deal does not end when you put their money in your pockets. Today we are holding you responsible for everything that happens after you put your product into our community. You do not get to say, "Not my problem," anymore. If someone overdoses or someone dies, you will be held responsible. With the ability to bring federal charges, we strengthen the tools we have to make our streets safer and help curb the menace these drugs have become. Our sincere thanks to the U.S. Attorney for having the fortitude to get involved to join this fight. This all started thanks to the incredible effort of the HCSO Heroin Working Group. They diligently strive every day to dry up the supply from our county, our community. The hard work of those detectives helped identify these drug dealers, and it was certainly no easy task. Behind me, you see the victim's family. They are the face of this story. Their loved one is gone because a drug dealer wanted to profit. They are the reason we are here. I want to extend my deepest condolences for their loss and thank them for having the courage to stand here today for all the families of those who have suffered at the hands of these drug dealers. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We are not done. So I'm sending this message directly to those who prey on our society with their illegal drugs. Today is a new day. You deal, they die, you are responsible. At this time, I have the pleasure of introducing our U.S. Attorney, Maria Chapa Lopez. We are so fortunate here in the Tampa Bay region that her path has led her back to the Tampa Bay area. She is one of the most hardworking, an individual who has the fortitude, doesn't back down from any type of challenge that lies ahead. And we couldn't be more fortunate in the Tampa Bay area here in Hillsborough County to have a U.S. Attorney who is willing to stand out in front and take on any challenge. U.S. Attorney Chapa Lopez, thank you for being such a great community partner. Thank you for working so hard, you and all the members at your office, to help keep our community safe and to make our community strong. At this time, I'll turn it over to her.
Thank you so much, Sheriff. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. And thank you again, Sheriff Chronister, for that introduction, and also for sending the message out to the community. As you heard from the sheriff, that Hillsborough County is unveiling their anti-opioid working group, their heroin working group, and we at the United States Attorney's Office are very, very excited about this and our ongoing partnership to fight crime in our community, and especially in targeting the opioid epidemic, which is something that we can only do together as a community and as a partnership. Our community has been greatly affected by the opioid and the pill mill crisis. We've been suffering from this for approximately 10 years. when I personally started as a prosecutor working to prosecute these cases. However, the most recent medical examiner available data today indicates that heroin and fentanyl are related to deaths and is growing substantially in our most populous counties, and unfortunately that includes Hillsborough County. Although the Middle District of Florida reaches from Jacksonville on our northernmost extremity to our southernmost extremity, which is Fort Myers, we here in the Tampa division are focused on helping our partners in Hillsborough County. As part of the Department of Justice's national initiative to combat the opioid epidemic, the United States Attorney's Office for our district here in Florida has also developed a comprehensive strategy to fight the crisis. It is the policy of our office to use every available tool in our arsenal, and I will talk about prosecutions, but that does not only include prosecutions. We will use every tool in our arsenal to combat the opioid epidemic and to save lives and to fight the twin scourges of the opioid effects, and that is the trafficking of these drugs here in our county and in our community, and the addiction that many of our citizens are suffering from. As part of that fight, we have designated a district-wide opioid coordinator, and that is Assistant United States Thomas Palermo, who is here, who is going to be leading the charge and prosecuting the cases that I will talk to you about here in a few minutes that are being prosecuted here in Hillsborough County. He's been designated to work with our law enforcement partners and to investigate and prosecute all of the cases that will come out of Hillsborough County, or the cases that will come out of Hillsborough County. Since we've put our focus on the opioid epidemic involving heroin and fentanyl, we've indicted 13 cases in the Middle District in the last year. And here, specifically in Hillsborough County, we've been working closely on 3 very important cases that were indicted here in 2018. The first one is Jeffrey Luis Rodriguez, and he was arrested on a criminal complaint and then indicted federally by a grand jury for conspiring to distribute and distribution of heroin and fentanyl with serious bodily injury. He is facing a mandatory penalty of life in federal prison. Another individual that has also been charged in this effort is Donald Calvin Hatch Jr., and he was arrested also by Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office on federal criminal complaint. He pled guilty on June 6th of 2018. He pled guilty to alleging in an information alleging a conspiracy to distribute heroin and fentanyl. He faces a maximum penalty of 30 years imprisonment. The third individual is Corey Damond Smith Jr., and he was indicted also in federal court or by a federal grand jury on May 22nd of 2018. This case is the first in Hillsborough County where an individual or a dealer has been federally indicted for the distribution of fentanyl resulting in the death of an individual. And that individual is the victim whose parents you've met here today. And our heart goes out to them, and we will do everything we can within the law and within the tools that are available to us to prosecute and see the case through on Corey Damond Smith. He is also facing a mandatory life in prison sentence. These cases are extremely difficult to prove, but they must be pursued. We must prosecute these cases. They are essentially what are murder cases, and we are very fortunate that AUSA Tom Palermo is the prosecutor in this case. He comes to us from state court, from the state prosecutor's office, where he prosecuted murder cases there. The difficulty of these cases is that they rely heavily on toxicology reports and on the determination made by the medical examiner. And you've met also here our other partners in this prosecution team, and that is our toxicologists and our medical examiners. As I said, these prosecutions are difficult, and although they are difficult, we will pursue them. We will not turn away from our responsibility. Our strategy, as I said earlier, is not just the prosecution in the criminal arena, but it is also the strategy also includes working closely on prevention, on education, and on outreach. And the outreach is through our Law Enforcement Coordination Committee, And through that program, our office has partnered closely with the Drug Enforcement Administration, with our local law enforcement partners, to include Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, with the medical examiners, and our other local government and non-government organizations and partners. Also with the schools and other community groups. Since we've focused on this opioid epidemic, more than 500 of our citizens have participated and are working on collaborative strategies to combat this drug abuse. That strategy includes the viewing and discussing of the impact of the film Chasing the Dragon, which documents the devastating effect of opioids in our communities. As far as training, more than 400 officers from the Middle District of Florida have been trained on how to investigate, how to report, and very, very important, how to safely handle these opioids, such as fentanyl and carfentanil and other analogs. Fentanyl is 10 times more lethal than heroin, and carfentanil is 1,000 times more lethal than heroin. So those are very, very dangerous substances that also put our law enforcement partners at risk in pursuing in the investigation of these cases. We're also using our tools in our civil division, who are also proactive in the investigation into the practices of the prescribers, the pharmacies, the distributors, and all those that appear to be associated with the abuse of opioid medications. Where appropriate, the civil division will initiate litigation against any individual or entity found to have violated the False Claims Act or that has failed to meet DEA regulatory obligations governing these type of medications. Our asset forfeiture section will also work with us, and they will work to ensure opioid trafficking does not pay, because the primary motive for trafficking in opioids is the same motive as it is in any other drug trafficking pursuit. It is greed and it is profit. The Asset Forfeiture Recovery Division shall work to confiscate any proceeds or any property used to aid the illegal distribution of opioids. We will continue to work closely with all our community partners and use everything we have available to us in our tools, in our toolkit, in our arsenal to pursue this crisis and this epidemic and this plague that is affecting our community. We will not quit until we have defeated it until we have defeated this plague from our community. I want to thank the sheriff for inviting me to this press conference, and now I will turn it over back to the Sheriff Chronister. Thank you so much, Sheriff.
Thank you, U.S. Attorney Chapo Lopez. At this time, I'd like to open up for any type of questions.
Sure. Could you talk about how this is a tactic shift, if you will? What's different from the case you're prosecuting under this federal statute than any other drug case that has been prosecuted here before? A drug dealer sells drugs. Extremely unfortunately, somebody died. What's the difference here?
Well, it's a historical day in Hillsborough County because this is the first time we are holding a dealer, a criminal, an individual responsible for someone's overdose death. So that's where it's different. We're holding that individual responsible, able to use the federal system to prosecute that individual. One of the individuals, the other two individuals are responsible and being prosecuted. They're responsible for at least 7 overdoses that we're aware of. You know, we have to hold these individuals responsible to hopefully deter these individuals, these profit-driven individuals, for taking advantage of some of our most vulnerable people in our community.
So is this going to be a trend now, do you think, with the help of the medical examiner's office and your federal partner here? Do you see more of these type of cases being prosecuted?
Well, I would like it not to be a trend, but moving forward, I think you'll see it a trend for a while. The diligent working men and women of the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, the Heroin Task Force, along with our partners, we certainly are doing everything we can to dry up the supply of this opioid, this synthetic heroin, whatever the case may be. So I'm sure as a result of this working group and the great work they're doing, you're going to hear more cases. Today just happens to be the first one.
Sheriff, what do you think is the advantage of the federal indictment or working with a U.S. attorney or perhaps just bringing state charges to some of these people?
I don't think it's a secret to anybody that in the federal system, the laws, you're held a lot more responsible for the prosecution. Whether you do more time, whether the penalties are more severe, it's certainly a deterrence for any type of criminal, and I'm hopeful that we don't have another case. I'm hopeful that today this message is heard loud and clear and we don't have another case. That's my hopes here today. But at the same time, I want these drug dealers to know that they're going to be held responsible, and we're showing that today.
Do you have a number of how many people in Hillsborough County have died because of fentanyl at all? Any numbers of that?
I think last year was 110.
Last year?
Yes, up to 2017.
110 death calls from that drug, that deadly cocktail that's out here on the streets.
In 2017.
In 2017, yes, last year.
There's a lot of communities across the country that are experiencing the same issues. Where does this type of program rank either similarly or differently from what's being tried?
And I don't know. I know here we certainly made it a priority initiative. As short as we are here at the Sheriff's Office, we have a working group that's focused on the enforcement part of it. And I'm proud of the great work that they do. I'm also proud of the great work that we do in the education and the prevention and treatment side of it, our involvement in that. This happens to be what we believe is a three-prong, multi-prong approach, and what you're hearing today is certainly a portion of the enforcement side, but how does it compare to some other sheriffs, some other counties? I'm not exactly sure. I think it's a great recipe for success here in Hillsborough County. Anyone else?
May I ask the U.S. Attorney, from a legal perspective, what do you have to do in general to establish that someone, contributed to the death of an individual as a result of this type of a case?
Well, you have to you have to prove that the drug with the assistance of the toxicologist and the medical examiner, that the actual cause of death was in fact the fentanyl that was consumed or that was found in the examinations, and then from that, then kind of go back and figure out who was the distributor of that fentanyl that resulted in the lethal dosage.
So you not only have to establish the link between the dealer and the person who purchased it, but that it was
The
this
actual-
dose.
the actual
that had
cause.
fentanyl.
The actual dose was the actual cause of death.
So that's not easy.
No, it's not. These are that's why I said these are very difficult cases. These are very challenging cases, but we can't turn away. In answer to a previous question, we are very proud to be working with Hillsborough County on this because this is our community. This is where I live. This is where we're from. But we're also working very closely with our other division offices and working with those counties and those sheriff's offices and pursuing similar prosecutions in those cases because it affects the entire district. It affects the entire nation. This is a priority for the Attorney General. This is a priority for the department and a priority for the administration. So this is we take this very seriously, and as hard as they are and as difficult as they are, we will not look away.
A lot of those dealers that are selling to the people that want to use it are getting their product from someone else. They're just a person that's selling on behalf of whether it's a manufacturer or a higher up. How can you tie that group into this as well? It's just not just the person that sold the product.
Well, that's how we're using other tools in our arsenal, other prosecutor or other assistant United States attorneys in our office to pursue other avenues, not just the criminal prosecution, but also the civil action going after pharmacists or other sources of this drug. We know it's coming from other countries, so we're trying to follow the trail on that as well, and work with our international partners as well. So, thank you.